Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Thursday, November 2nd, 2023. Professor Michael Rectenwald joins us now. Professor Rectenwald is seeking the Libertarian nomination, that is the nomination of the Libertarian Party to run for President of the United States, and he has received my endorsement, along with the endorsements of many other people that are interested in small government, maximum individual liberty and peace. Professor Rectenwald, welcome back to the show. Why is it that the U.S. feels it has a commitment to Israel? Well, we don't have a treaty with Israel, but why is it that it is a foregone conclusion in the Congress that we have a commitment to Israel? One of the strongest countries in the Middle East, maybe the strongest, can certainly fend for itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear that there is a serious diplomatic incursions into the United States by the lobby, the Jewish lobby, the AIPAC lobby, and there are significant interests to support Israel in terms of military aid and so forth that are so entrenched in the state that they seem to be utterly, inexhaustible. And so that we're looking at, for example, on the floor of the Congress, one congressman said that we should not be referring to Gazans as innocent civilians because they are all supposedly Nazis. This is the kind of rhetoric that's being trumped. And of course, this is coming from the typical neocons like Lindsey Graham and others. They're all blowing the horns and outrageously putting Israel, I think, at peril, and the United States as well.
I've been asking my guests this week who've been critical of Prime Minister Netanyahu, not for defending Israel, but for the aggressive, over-the-top assault on civilians in Gaza. Mm-hmm. If my guests believe, and so I ask you, Professor Rectenwald, do you think that the Netanyahu government believes that all men are created equal?
No, I think that coming out of Likud and the Knesset, there are many voices, including his, that are in fact supremacist. They're Jewish supremacists. I can't look at I've read so many statements to that end, to that effect, that it's hard to say that they are anything but that. Likewise, they do not believe that the citizens and the people in Gaza, they're not quite citizens, are they, are less than human, and that therefore their lives are completely expendable.
And does that view prevail in the American Congress, even though everybody in the Congress has taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and federal laws, which includes the concept, not the very document, but the concept that all men are created equal, all have equal rights, that our rights come from our humanity, not from the state?
Yeah, I mean, look, we just got Mike Johnson in as the Speaker of the House, and he is bringing avowedly his Christian eschatological views about Israel into the Congress, and that is this idea that until the Temple Mount is secured for Israel, then the second coming will happen. I mean, this is just unbelievable. So I think that this is very prevalent, not only in Congress, but also throughout the United States. There's this sense that the Gazans are just fodder for some end, and they don't really count in terms of their human life. In fact, I read on and on about different justifications, whether biblical or otherwise, for completely eradicating them. And this is it's unconscionable what people were actually saying.
I want to play a clip of one of your predecessors. He was seeking the Republican nomination at the time, but of course he is a former Libertarian nominee for president, the great Ron Paul. This is 12 years ago. The same issue comes up over and over again. American aid to Israel. Tell me what you think of this.
why does Israel need our help? We need to get out of their way. I mean, we interfere with them. We interfere with them when they deal with their borders, when they want to have peace treaties. We tell them what they can do because we buy their allegiance and they sacrifice their sovereignty to us. And then they decide they want to bomb something. That's their business, but they should, suffer the consequences. When they bombed the Iraqi missile site, nuclear site back in the 80s, I was one of the few in Congress that said it's none of our business, and Israel should take care of themselves. Israel has 200, 300 nuclear missiles, and they can take care of themselves. Why should we commit? We don't even have a treaty with Israel. Why do we have this automatic commitment that we're going to send our kids and send our money endlessly to Israel? So I think they're quite capable of taking care of themselves. I think we do detriment. Just think of all the money we gave to Egypt over 30 or 40 years. Now look, we were buying friendship. Now there's a civil war. They're less friendly to Israel. That whole thing is going to backfire once we go bankrupt and we remove our troops. So I think we should be very cautious in our willingness to go to war and send troops without a proper declaration by the U.S. Congress.
Let me let Herman.
U.S. Congress hasn't declared war since December 8th, 1941, and we all know what happened the day before. Or do we know what happened the day before? A lot of us believe that FDR orchestrated that and knew it was happening so that American public opinion would change from 80% anti-war to 80% pro-war, whatever, it happened. But what are your thoughts on Congressman Paul's analysis of the wisdom and constitutionality or lack thereof of us supporting wars for Israel?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have been a grave enabler of Israel to undertake its militarism and aggressive posture towards all of Palestine, not only the settlements, but now this full-scale incursion. And this is actually endangering Israel. There is a very good chance that a wide Arabic population and with support perhaps of various states other than Iran could get involved in countering this Israeli offensive. And so we've been enabling them to behave this way and allowing them to have this kind of posture, which is very, very perilous, not only for them, but for us. And now we have all these ships in the East Mediterranean Sea sitting there like sitting ducks, really, almost a provocation to the Arab world to strike one of them. And once that happens, then we're in. It becomes the new Pearl Harbor. And that's exactly what I think is possibly on the table here. We can't just put these targets out there like this. And of course, this is drawing China to send ships, and it's moving Russia to move ships around the various places, and we have ships in the Gulf as well. All of this tends to exacerbate and escalate all these tensions, and perhaps get the Arab world in league and to do something militarily. And this could be, World War III, of course, and who knows where it would go from there.
The president of Turkey famously on Halloween, which I guess is 2 days ago, addressed a crowd of greater than 1 million, saying Israel is committing war crimes and the Palestinians have the right to resist. He even went so far as to say Hamas is a liberation organization, without getting into the wisdom or the accuracy of what he says. Turkey's a member of NATO. It has the second largest army in NATO, second only to ours. It has the largest, most professional army in that part of the world. Is Israel risking a far greater conflagration, one that it can't handle, by the aggressive manner in which it's pursuing Hamas, which results in killing innocent Palestinians by the thousands?
Yeah, I mean, Erdogan's his statement is very indicative of the idea that, in fact, whatever alliances we had in the Middle East, that alliance network has been fractured. And now we're looking at a member of NATO, a very prominent political figure in the world, as you said, with the second largest military in NATO after the United States, making these kinds of statements, this should be a very serious warning. In fact, Alistair Crook pointed out a few days ago that, Washington, D.C., the State Department and the Defense Department are very worried about the instability that has been ushered in here thanks to this invasion of Gaza and the bombing campaign. So we're looking at the possibility of these Arab nations getting involved. And if it gets much worse, which is, it's terrible at this point, we're looking at crimes against humanity, an onslaught, and then a chorus of people in the United States calling for the total destruction of Gaza. If this gets any worse, if this goes any further with, already, I think upwards of 10,000 people dead, 20,000 wounded, and hundreds of thousands displaced, a total humanitarian catastrophe, the world's not going to look on this and stay silent and sit on their hands. And that's particularly the case with reference to the Middle East.
How do you, I know how you make the argument to libertarians in your quest for the libertarian nomination, because libertarians agree, for the most part, with everything you just said. How do you make that argument with Republicans, Democrats, and independents? I mean, look at the Congress. It's 95% pro-war party. I don't think the country is 95%, but because the country, they're more interested in whether Taylor Swift's boyfriend is having a good day in the NFL.
Yeah.
But if American boys start coming home in body bags, well, then the country will be concerned. So a couple of points. Colonel McGregor reports that U.S. Marines have been killed in Gaza. You haven't heard that on Fox News or ABC or NBC or CBS or the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal, because the government doesn't want that out there. At some point, it's going to come out. And you're confronted with an electorate that either doesn't care or cheers war on. What do you do? What do you say?
Well, I try to invoke the recent history. In fact, there was this brief moment of time during which we had a so-called anti-war right who were opposed to sending more arms and funds to Ukraine, who were post hoc against the Iraqi war. Many of them probably cheered it on, but at least post hoc. So we had this contingent that really significantly disappoints me when it comes to this Israeli conflict. They have been completely bamboozled. It's like all the crises they've seen in the past that have turned out to be propaganda from the state about Iraq, about Ukraine, about COVID, about just about anything. Now they buy it all, hook, line, and sinker when it comes to Israel and this Gazan conflict. So what we need to do is reach back to them to make it clear to them, look what's happened in the past. Look at the lies that were told to get us into the Iraq war, to bomb Iraq, killing hundreds of thousands and displacing millions. And we're doing the same thing here, and it may be even worse, because we're now talking about a multinational conflagration brewing. They just have to be reminded of history, that the blowback, as Ron Paul, the great Ron Paul, put it, will be enormous. And this is not something that the United States is really that well positioned to win. I mean, look at the failure of the U.S. NATO troops in Ukraine. This shows that NATO is not the all-powerful force that it was made out to be. The same is true for the U.S. with reference to this Middle Eastern crisis.
You wrote a fascinating piece recently at the site of our friend Lou Rockwell, called LouRockwell.com. Your piece is called "Statism is the Cause of the Israel-Hamas War." The opening line is absolutely rational to me, to you, to most people watching us now, but startling to the general public. I have to quote it precisely. It's very brief. "The state is an organized crime racket Explain, please.
Yeah, I mean, the state's existence in general, now we're speaking in the abstract, states are robbers barons. First of all, they extort money out of people against their will by coercion vis-a-vis taxes. So, and then they regularly violate the non-aggression principle by using force that that individuals are not permitted to do. You and I can't initiate force against another person or group of people without consequence. States do it regularly. States are criminal, robber baron, murderers, and thieves. I mean, this is what they are at base, and that's something that has to be understood, because it's necessary for dealing with all kinds of issues in the world. So that's the bottom line from which we need to understand conflicts, military and otherwise.
Does the state have a right to exist? I'm not talking about the state of Israel. I'm talking about any government. Any government which is a monopoly of force in a geographic area. Rights come from our humanity.
Right.
Does the state have a right to exist, and the concept that we understand as we understand rights, Michael?
A state does have a right to exist if, in fact, it allows for the voluntary taxation of its citizens, and then thereby, and what follows from that is the right of secession from that state if that agreement is no longer tenable or workable or acceptable. So, the fact that you are a captive of a state, that is not legitimate, that you are a captive and can't get out, that you have no choice. So as long as you can secede from a state, I mean, states are supposedly protection rackets that protect us from violence and from theft and so forth. But once they become more than that and worse than that, in fact, when they violate your rights and they steal from you against your will and they're using your taxes to kill other people abroad, they are illegitimate. And but in theory, there is possibly a justifiable, legitimate state. That state would be one that you could voluntarily leave and form a different one with a different protection source.
What is, aside from its initials being the first syllable of my last name, NAP, what is the non-aggression principle?
It's very simple. It means that you cannot rightly initiate force against another person or group except in self-defense. So it's just simply live and let live, largely, but it means I can't initiate force against you without unless it's in an act of self-defense.
So if you can't initiate force against me, and if the government derives its powers from the consent of the governed, then the government doesn't have the power to initiate force. It just does it anyway.
It does it anyway. This makes it the greatest violator of the NAP, the non-aggression principle in the world. And governments are the biggest violators of that. They are constantly, regularly committing criminal acts in terms of taxation, but also initiating force.
Whatever you think of Iran, I chuckle when somebody in Congress says, and Joe Biden just gave Iran $6 billion. Wait a minute. Joe Biden's Department of the Treasury and Department of Justice stole $6 billion from Iran and then agreed to return it in return for some prisoner exchange. I'm all in favor of prisoner exchanges. But we had no more. The federal government of the United States of America had no more right to that $6 billion than Iran does to $6 billion in the American banking system.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying the same thing about the $50 billion that Biden supposedly gave to Iran. This really has to do with the fact that they took off the embargo on their oil sales. That isn't money that the United States handed to Iran, and neither is the $6 billion. This is just simply allowing them to have the money that they already had, or to do commerce with other countries and buyers of their oil. It's ludicrous. So there's so many unbelievable statements that are being passed off as true in this political atmosphere. It's just stunning.
I'm smiling because Joe Biden is a Well, he used to be a JFK Democrat. Now he's a hard left Democrat. But
Right.
I'm thinking of our colleague and mutual friend, Professor Tom Woods, who famously quipped, "It seems that no matter who you vote for president, you end up with John McCain. You end up with somebody that wants to start wars."
Absolutely. And look at the contenders for the Republican nomination right now. The latest, the latest abdicator to the neocon camp, Vivek Ramaswamy, who was, making overtures to suggest that, he would, by 2028, he would hope Israel would be capable of defending itself without the $3.8 billion per year that we send them. And now, of course, this $14 billion on top of that. And then recently he said, well, we'll send Israel aid as long as they want it. So, and now what country is going to turn down money from anybody? So it's a ludicrous position. It just shows you there is no alternative in the uniparty for representing peace. None.
You're right. And Nikki Haley is trying to outdo Lindsey Graham. They're both calling for bombing Tehran. Bombing Tehran. Can you imagine what the consequences would be?
It would be unbelievable. You're now really almost guaranteeing the entrance into the conflict of Russia, perhaps even China, Egypt, and any number of states there. You could basically count on World War III if you bombed Tehran. This woman is a plague on the political sphere. She should be silenced somehow. But of course, I don't recommend silencing her. I recommend that we shame, ridicule, and otherwise make utterly ridiculously preposterous what she's saying, which it is on its face. She's a complete sham that this person has gets the political spotlight and gets to spout this nonsense. It's just an outrage.
Professor Rectenwald, all the best to you. All the best in your campaign. Thanks very much for the time you take to join us every week.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Please go to my campaign website at rectheregime.com. That's rectheregime.com, and get aboard and support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rectenwald. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Coming up at 3:30 Eastern, Scott Horton from antiwar.com. How dangerous is the ground offensive into into Gaza, and how many Americans are involved? We'll see you then. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.